Let's begin by saying this. Thank you for being here and for being interested. If this lasts longer than you anticipated, you will not hurt my feelings at all if you need to get up and head off to your luncheon plans. Okay, grand. But not knowing how long the computer will take, let's go ahead and get this started. Sabbaticals. We often hear about these things at universities. It used to be a common standard practice that university professors every 7 years would be granted a sabbatical, 6 months, half of an academic year to study, to take time away from the classroom and really dig deep into the discipline, maybe take a break from the students, but really a dedicated time of research to enhance their professional skills. I am grateful to serve a church. The Presbyterian Church has taken that model and really encouraged ministers to do the same, being mindful that parish ministry is full of ups and downs, and we don't need to get into all of that. But the Presbyterian Church especially has said sabbaticals can be really helpful for pastors just to step away and refresh, to dig deep into the Spirit of the Lord, because the church believes that when pastors come back, they're full of excitement and energy and can do really great things. So this has been my first sabbatical, because typically they're scheduled every 7 years in one place. And do you know how long I worked in West Virginia? 6 years, until you stole me away and I didn't get a sabbatical. But I say that mostly joking. We'll see if Kyle gets this up. But my plan of study for this was reading a long reading list of works around the Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor. Taylor is still alive. He's a philosopher at McGill University in Montreal, professor emeritus at this time in his life. But he writes about the idea of secularism, that we live in a predominantly secular age and we swim in its waters without even realizing it. He wrote a 700-page tome in 2008 called The Secular Age, but it hit a nerve, and lots of other philosophers and theologians grasped onto that, and there's been a whole slew of literature around secularism. So if the there's progress. Go Broncos. Boy, they need our prayers these days. There was progress. They won. They looked decent against FCS team. Yay. Anyways, my reading revolved around his work. So June, there are 3 portions of my sabbatical that I really want to talk about. June, which is what I call my season of disengagement and reading and honeydews. The big middle portion of what I titled the Almost Biblical Sabbatical, Almost Biblical Road Trip, 39 days. We thought about getting it to 40, but we'll tell you more about that later. So the road trip. And then there was the process of coming back to Boise in mid-August and reintegrating. So June, I like to work, and I'm a man, and I might suffer from a hideous sin. Oh, look at that. Kyle, I love you so much. I might suffer from the sin of finding my personal identity in my work. And I have a good job, right? I'm a pastor. I get to walk with people and love them and pray for them. But on June 2nd, Kevin was sitting at our home, twiddling my thumbs, saying, "This is really hard." So Chrissy gave me a to-do list because we had a big road trip to do. So I worked through my to-do list, and it was fun being distracted and checking things off the box. But God was whispering in my ear, "Kevin, you are much more than that what you do." Now, we are what we do to a degree, right? Our actions every day form our mind, but for the men out there who do paychecks, I want to remind you that the Lord said to me, you are not just a worker. You are a beloved child of God, so why can't you just sit still with that? What's up with all of your anxiety, Kevin? And here are the pictures that I wanted to show you. In the bottom right was the night right before we left for the road trip. There was this big dust storm blowing up at the end of June, and I was coming from a time with my friend, and there's a rainbow. You can't see it, but in the wind and in the dust and in the nastiness that I kind of felt in my soul, there is a rainbow. God's reminder that I am there with you and it will be okay. The bottom left picture. If anyone wants an e-bike, would be happy to give you an e-bike. This is a picture of the motor for my e-bike that broke right at the end of May, right at the best riding season. There's a wire coming out of that metal tube, and the wire is broke right in the middle. It's a piece of metal, right? It broke. And the company wants $400 to replace the entire motor. So I ordered it because I love my bike, right? And you know what they sent me? A battery, not a motor. I was so disappointed, and I'm going on this big road trip. I sent the battery back, and I finally decided that I'm just going to give it away because it's frustrating. And that picture, is a good visual for me of the frustrations of June, because sometimes we just get frustrated, right? So being away was difficult for me in June. I want you to know that. I love y'all, but maybe it's a sin that I find a lot of my identity in my work. And then in the upper left, this was a nice distraction from the spiritual work. Chrissy's stepsister was able to get married in Estes Park, Colorado. Terrible place, right? Blessed to participate in the wedding. So June, there's June. It was a wonderful month. But we're getting ready for a big road trip. What could be 49 days. Here's my reading list up here. As I put this together, I thought, Kevin, you need to read more fiction in your life. You are a boring nerd. Also in June, we took our kids to camp. Some of your kids went to camp. There was a nice gathering of parents that went out to dinner as we dropped off our kids with Meg at camp. It was lovely, but it was a lovely picture of gathering the family. But this is the heart, the almost biblical road trip, 39 days driving across the country. We started by going to Grand Teton National Park. That's the kids in the tents there. My 20-degree sleeping bag is a big marketing gimmick. It got down to 30, and I was very cold. But it was a stellar place. On the road trip, the top right photo is on the campus of Westminster College in Westminster, Pennsylvania. And the bottom right is where we spread my father's ashes. Some of you read a little bit about that. There's the schedule. I married the best organizer in the world. This is all Dr. Starcher's work up here. I'm not going to go through it, but the destination list is long, and she had it all planned out by mid-June. Here's our road trip by the numbers. 5 national parks, fabulous. 4 state parks. They have the best campgrounds, I'm convinced. Chrissy has a goal to run a race in every state, 50 races, 50 states by the time she's 50 years old. We're getting a little closer to that age than we like. Chrissy was able to mark 4 races as we went across the country. Had 10 nights of camping in the Starcher Hotel, which didn't break until we got back, hallelujah. We traveled through 15 states. We predominantly went across I-90, and then we came back west I-80 predominantly. Chrissy has this saying about water. If the Starchers are going crazy, just take us to water, and the water calms us all. So we played in the water a lot. We saw all of our family. What a gift. The reality is that our nearest biological family. Chrissy has an uncle that lives half of the year in Denver, maybe, and everyone else is 2,000 miles away. It was great to be with family. We drove 7,223 miles, and we spent 100 hours in the car. And guess what the percentage was of driving? Kevin likes to drive, and Kevin likes to be safe. So I drove 100 hours in the car. So what stuck out from this big road trip? I don't think I need to camp 10 nights a year anymore. Time with family. What a blessing that is. And I want to remind you that, like, you literally are our church family here. We depend upon you, but there is something nice about biology. We were blessed to be able to attend the new Wilmington Mission Conference at Westminster College. For the past 125 years or so, gatherings of missionaries from all around the world gather in this spot to hear what God is doing. Predominantly a Presbyterian conference, but this year there are about 450 missionaries and weird people like me that attend, and the Starchers. We heard this fantastic preacher from Ghana. We were able to reconnect with some old friends, acquaintances, missionaries from Niger, from Sudan, some of the most excellent people I've been blessed to know. Oh no, I'm crying. So it was just wonderful and refreshing to be there. Spreading my father's ashes. I wrote this public piece on social media. Some of you read that. You can read it. Short story, you may be aware that my relationship with my father is complicated, but God created this beautiful space for us to reflect beautifully upon family, and that was really good. 39, we learned that 39 days on the road is a bit too much. The Starchers are very grateful for the gift you gave us, for the opportunity to drive. We're grateful for the experience. Chrissy, do you think we'll do something like that again? No. No. So we were at the mission conference in July, and the theme of the conference was Joshua, be strong and courageous. And I was at the conference, nice time, and we made the connection. 39, maybe 40-day road trip, depending on how far we come back. It's kind of biblical. So I, throughout the summer, dug deep, just reading Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua. The Exodus story, because how long did that take? 40 years and lots of 40-day experiences. And I'll share a little bit about that deeper, about what that biblical journey meant as they went through the wilderness and as the Starchers went through the cornfields of South Dakota. This video that you're seeing, when we spread my father's ashes, God couldn't have planned it better. There's this swarm of butterflies. And you just saw the kids just walking through 100 or so butterflies for this very meaningful experience as we spread my father's ashes. It's like, oh my gosh, God, you are right here. We couldn't have planned this better. So there was the almost biblical road trip. We could have spent an extra night in the hotel just to say, yes, it was 40 days, but we had decided it was not worth it. And the almost biblical road trip is a better definition. A few more pictures. Re-engagement was what happened when we came back. I was starting to do a little bit of work so that on September 5th, I didn't come in and feel overwhelmed. But God did a few special things. Picture on the far right is a reading from Ecclesiastes. I read through Ecclesiastes every summer, and I was reading this by a campfire in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says, what gain has the worker for his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He's made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that man cannot find out what God is. Has done from the beginning to the end. I need better glasses. I perceive that there is nothing better for them to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's good gift to man. And as I was wrestling through, am I simply that which I do and get paid for? By the creek that day, God said, there's nothing better than you just to simply enjoy this. The kids playing in the stream, beautiful wife cooking over a campfire. Maybe this is what it's about, just soaking that in. The far bottom right picture is a double rainbow. There was a thunderstorm that came through Boise 3 weeks ago or so. Many of you saw the double rainbow. We were just sitting out in the garage watching the storm, and friends, just another beautiful spiritual experience, saying, Starcher, look at the goodness all around. And in the middle, I love my daughter so much, and sometimes she causes me some challenges. But she made this little glow-in-the-dark necklace. And she said, come here, I want to show it to you. And the 4 pieces are our family, all 4 of us. And Meg and this church has done a good job of teaching her. In the middle is the heart, and that heart is God's love. And she says, this is what our family is about. Oh, I love you guys. A few more slides here. While we traveled, was able to go to lots of different churches, big churches, small churches. I could do a whole session on what I learned. I became more convinced that congregations are simply a manifestation of communities that adhere to similar language, culture, and aesthetics. And the biggest thing, here's the biggest thing that you can do for new people, just be kind and welcome them. I went to this very large church, literally with 2,000 people, and do you know how many people said hi to me? 0. Maybe the person giving me the bulletin, but I walked in by myself. But I went to another congregation, 50 people, and they loved me. Oh my goodness, it was wonderful. So maybe the biggest lesson you can take from this sabbatical is when you see someone new, just say, hi, how are you? I don't remember your face. That's what I do all the time. And sometimes they get it wrong. You're like, oh, I've been here for 5 weeks now, Pastor. But this simple acknowledgement of presence means something. Maybe I'll do another class, who knows. So here's the summary. Some pictures, Graham Teton, we played the license plate game. This picture of Alaska. We didn't find Alaska till we got all the way to West Virginia. That was weird. But here's the summary. What a wonderful gift it was afforded to us. The pastor was gone for 3 months. And you know what? You all were awesome. And that's the sign of a healthy congregation. Is that worship happened every week. Ministries happened. Youth group was planned without the pastor. Chili cook-off was planned. Friends, thanks be to God, you don't need me. And I say that jest, but I also say it seriously, right? Because one day I will either die, retire, or move on. One of those 3 things are going to happen. And I feel better knowing that, y'all can do it. That's really good. Culture, aesthetics, and language. That is any church. We can talk more about that. I already talked about being friendly. Christian mission in a secular age. I went into this saying, I'm going to create something. There is a professor at Calvin College, James Smith, and he taught a college class at Calvin, just reading through Charles Taylor's book, all 700 pages. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got 3 months. I'm going to create a class for Boise State. And it occurred to me that I can't, Calvin's a Christian school, Boise State is not. I can't differentiate my personal faith enough from this topic to make it secular enough to teach at Boise State. But then I thought, but New Wilmington Mission Conference has workshop speakers, so I did create a syllabus, and I have proposed to them, they may accept it or not, a workshop at New Wilmington Mission Conference about Christian mission in a secular age. Lois, our elder for adult ed, is being very kind to me, maybe to you, that I will offer this class here in November. But 4 hours worth of what does it mean to be Christian in a world that is predominantly secular, maybe even a church that is predominantly secular. So stay tuned, coming in November. It's impacted my sermon planning for this fall. I'm convinced that people just need Jesus, so nothing super fancy. I'm just following the lectionary text and letting Jesus preach his own message. But this idea of Exodus and this almost biblical sabbatical, as I was reading through Exodus, some things stuck out about Moses and his journey. Number one, what stuck out to me is that Moses never makes it to the promised land. And friends, we are all on a journey. And I think that God has called me as a leader to take our community through the wilderness of the world on our way to get there. And we're always marching there, right? And to get there, there are trials and tribulations. It's a reminder for me that my work here will never be complete. And that's okay. Some other things of Moses' ministry, not to mention that the people were stiff-necked people. Thank you for those who laughed. Moses really depends upon his elders. His father-in-law comes out and says, Moses, you got a big job. You really need to call other people and empower them to attend to the details. And I'm thinking to myself, Kevin, how can I stay focused on getting the people to the journey while also empowering other leaders to get there? I confess that I did not read Leviticus. However, throughout Exodus and Numbers, there is a lot of attention to worship. And it can be easy for readers to get bogged down into why does God care about the details of what's happening in the tabernacle. But it is a reminder to me that God, who makes a way for the people, cares very much about worship and what we do and how we make that special and right. That worship, there's a lot of attention to detail, right? But there's never any attention given in the Exodus story about how the people felt. Because worship was never about them. It was about God Almighty. I could spend longer on that, but I need to say thank you to some folks. And the last bullet point up here is I'm still processing this wonderful gift y'all gave me. I want to thank you for that. So thank yous, and then you can ask questions. I want to say thanks to God. Like, what a gift. There are not many professions that get this gift. All of it is just a blessing. To the Presbyterian Church USA, who has made it part of our ethos that we expect churches to offer this gift to their pastors. And then I want to say thank you to Covenant, because while the Presbyterian Church expects it, they don't make you. So you did not have to give me a sabbatical. But thank you to the session who stepped up and said, yes, we did agree to this when we called you in 2017, and we're still going to make our commitments. But on the session, folks, every single one of them stepped up to do ministry. Thank you. To our staff and volunteers, I'm really grateful that you don't need me. Hallelujah. Like, seriously, I feel really good about that. Guest preachers, I've heard over and over, Kevin, what a gift. We miss you, but what a gift it was to hear from other voices. And I'd like to continue that every now and then. I want to earn my paycheck, but what voices can we hear from that can teach us, point us to the Lord? To the Reverend Alex Chamberlain, thank you. I don't know if you're still in here, but there were, Alex stepped in to be on duty for pastoral care. And names and places that you have no idea happened, but that Alex went in the role of a pastor because his friend, his colleague was gone. So Alex, I love you and I thank you. To the Presbyterian Board of Pensions, not only was I able to collect my regular paycheck from you, but because sabbaticals are important to the denomination, the Board of Pensions gifted me a $5,000 grant to support our travels across the country. Yeah. And then lastly, to my family, because I can't think of anyone else I'd rather spend 39 days in a car with. We all had like a good day where we just stayed to ourselves when we got back. But I want to open this up to any questions that you might have, thoughts. If there are none, we can get on our way to lunch early, or if you just need to leave, that's okay too. But any questions? Yes. Yes, I did. The question is, did I eat a bunch of food? And the answer is, I had to readjust my belt when I got back. And new foods, I don't know that there were new foods necessarily, but we did eat a lot of good food. Thanks, Pam. Tony.
When you were talking, you said how you went to one church that was really big and nobody said hi to you. And then you went to a person church who everybody welcomed you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the problems of getting too big?
The question is, Kevin said I went to a super mega church where people weren't friendly. Then I went to a smaller church where people were overwhelming friendly. And then the question was, is that because they were too big? And I think the answer is, I don't know. But I would say that my own analysis, take it for what it's worth, is that at the very large church, worship was a production. And it was seamless. There was literally a fog machine. The lights are dimmed. There's a light show. And I don't want to diminish this because I think it can be a valid form of worship. But the stage is set perfectly, and I'm not exaggerating. Like the musicians on stage were 20s to 30s, all attractive people. Worship is a production, and you go to this church and you expect nothing less. And I don't want to diminish that. I think that, A, that's not for me, and B, it's just different than our culture, language, and aesthetics, what we like, what we don't like. I don't know. I think that you could be a church of 2,000 people and still say, hi, it's great to see you. But I don't know. I mean, the church is a heck of a lot bigger than us. They have buses going to it every Sunday. So maybe, I don't know. Chris.
Kevin, what's one thing that God really put on your heart that you pondered?
One thing that God put on my heart and ponder is two. One, the Exodus story, and if God has called me to lead this congregation through the wilderness, how do I do that well? How do I do that faithfully? And it's not rocket science, but what I learned is that my role, I just need to be faithful to God. Moses had this beautiful relationship with God. That was his primary role, to stay close to God as he led the people. So for me, that is a spiritual reality that I am taking with me into the sabbatical. It is not necessarily to make sure that we have the best chili cook-off, which will be good, by the way. But I can empower, like Moses, Katie and Sean to do that, and I don't need to worry about it. But if I can stay connected to God, I can lead the congregation to where we need to go. The second thing is secularism. Come to the class in November. That will be a lot of fun as I talk about geeky stuff. But out of that, if you want to get the preview for what I will say in session 4 of that, the church today needs to stay close to God. It is not about programs. Programs matter, but our primary mission is not to put on rock concerts, but to point people to the grace of Jesus Christ, because without that, literally, people die without knowing the good news. Like, we can make a difference in the world. So we need to stay true to the gospel. I say this in every new members class. Jesus cares deeply about social issues. Social issues have divided the church today in America because people are too worried about power over their relationship with God. So we are involved in the community, but my mission here is not to be the church that is known for its social position on X, Y, and Z. I believe we are called to be the church that points people to Jesus Christ. Sorry, more than you bargained for. Okay.
So besides the 39 days and X thousand miles, what would you have done differently?
Oh, what a great question. What would we have done differently? Chris, any thoughts?
I wouldn't have done the 39 days differently.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do it again. Right.
Chris, Chrissy's response was, I don't know that we would want to do it differently, but we wouldn't want to do it again. Yeah, I don't know that we would have done anything differently. I don't know that it is what I expected. I think I had a lot of question marks. To dive deeper into Chrissy and I's way that we travel. Kevin would just take 3 days to get to Pennsylvania. Chrissy would take 3 weeks. So I would, yeah, there's a fun answer. Liz.
You asked Mike and myself if our daughters still remember travels, camping trips,
Mm-hmm.
such from being young. What do you think about Levi and Laurel? What do you think their memories are from their experiences?
Yeah, the Buckinghams and I had lovely conversations about travel, and Liz's question is, what do I think about the kids? I am prayerful, and I do believe that this was good. Levi can't wait to go camping again. That may be bad. I so loved them. I hate that New Wilmington is so far from here, because they do a terrific job of inviting families like you to learn about what God is up to in the world. So I love that they got to experience Bible study in their own age group with mission kids, black, white, from all over the world. Fantastic. And if any family wants to go next year, let's figure that out. So yeah, I think this will be good for the kids, even if we don't do it again. But I am open to a sabbatical next summer. Bob Braun, Reverend Bob Braun.
Follow up to Chrissy's question. Was there any event in your adventure that surprised you?
Chris, we're at the point where you should come up here and talk if you want to. The question is, was there anything that surprised me?
Oh, I have something.
Microphone, please.
This probably seems pretty minor, but I didn't want to drive across the country at first. And so spending all that time in the car I had some anxiety about doing that. But I think that the kids and both of us, I was the navigator, he was the driver. The kids did so great on some of those really, really long days. And I think now, I'm like, oh yeah, we could drive to California. That would be fine. So I think just giving that a perspective of yeah, we can do this. So we've overcome some obstacles. And I think, I think, having those experiences with the kids and them doing so well in the car was a surprise, a good surprise.
Mm-hmm. I can't top that. Mr. Turner.
Yeah, you travel a lot of miles. Did you have any car problems, or did you happen to stop and help someone or something like that?
Greg's question is, we traveled a lot. Did we have any car issues helping others?
No, I thought we were going to. That was one of my worries, and we did not.
The 2011
We had to get an
Subaru
oil
Outback
change.
with
That's
over
about it.
100,000 miles do great. We did hit a bird in Kansas City.
The bird
That was
actually
weird.
hit us,
Thank
I
you.
think is a fair way to put that. There were some feathers.
Anything else? Bruce.
You have a good tent conversation with your
Good tent conversation. Did we have any of those as kids were falling asleep?
What about the lightning bugs? So our kids, so a lot of people here, you don't have lightning bugs in the West. And the first, I think it was near Sioux Falls, South Dakota, is when you first started seeing lightning bugs. And Laurel was just in awe of that God would make such an amazing little creature, and she caught them each evening. We did not take them into the tent, but she would catch them and look at them, and we had a lot of fun with the lightning bugs this summer.
Jim.
Kevin, did you all have a most and least favorite state?
A most and least favorite state. Oh, this is good. I'll let you answer first. So my least favorite state, and I'll confess some sins here, Jim Bannon. We were nearing the end of our camping section, and we go to Trumpelow, Wisconsin. Have anyone ever heard of that little state or little city on the Mississippi River? Now, you wouldn't know this by looking at the state park camp reservation form, but Chrissy loves water. We all love water. She got us a great spot by the water. So we drive in, and it's raining, and I'm already tired from camping, and I'm thinking, oh, we're in the east now. There's going to be mosquitoes. So we pull up, and this body of water is not a body of water. It is a swamp full of lily pads and stuff, and the mosquitoes were not as bad as Grand Teton National Park, but they were pretty bad. So we spent a night there, and it just kept raining. And I said, Chris, we got to go. And she agreed. I think that she saw the weirdness in my soul. And when we left that campground in Trumpelow, Wisconsin, I told it that it was number one, using a certain finger, and then I drove off because I was so ready. Number one, worst spot. I was so ready to be done. But do you have a favorite spot?
There were so many amazing things that we saw and did. I think my favorite camping spot was probably Custer State Park. We had a really nice water spot by this beautiful little creek, and the kids had so much fun playing in the creek. And then on the campsite, it was just pristine. Like, it had a pond with a beach and a playground, and so it was really a lot of fun to hang out there with the kids. But the majesty of the Grand Tetons were just pretty amazing too, so it's hard to pick.
And the Black Hills, Mike and I were talking about this earlier, are just stunning. If you haven't been to the Black Hills, go. The history is a terrific reminder to, like white guy here, that history is complicated with Mount Rushmore, and then the Crazy Horse Memorial, and then just the conversation with the natives. And I learned that in the early 20th centuries, the native Lakota tribe sued the federal government for violation of the Treaty of Fort Laramie and taking the Black Hills. And in 1980, I didn't know this until this summer, in 1980, the Supreme Court of the United States said, yes, the government stole your land. There's nothing we can do about it now, but here's $2 billion. And do you know that to this day, the natives have not taken that money, with the primary argument being that it was never about money, it was about the land and how those populations continue to live. And I don't know that there's a right side, like, don't hear me advocating, but it was a terrific reminder that, like, history is complicated, and I think that we need to, like, certainly acknowledge that if we're going to be neighbors with one another. Jim, thanks. That was a really good question. Anything else? Well, friends, as I said earlier, thank you so much. Maybe thank you just for being you. And I promise I'll stop this joke now. But if anyone wants to send me away next summer, I'm all open. Friends, go in peace to love and serve the Lord.